As you might recall, we went through a procurement process some time ago between two proponents, and UPEG, or this consortium, was determined to be the best opportunity for the best value for the citizens of Hamilton. We then directed our staff to finalize discussions and negotiations in terms of coming to a final master agreement, and that master agreement was approved today at City Council. So as you probably know by now, it's a 30-year long-term lease arrangement. If I get any of these specifics wrong, I'm sure Ryan and Ray will correct me, but it is a long-term lease arrangement on the three facilities: the First Ontario Centre, Hamilton Place, and Convention Centre. The consortium is responsible for all operating costs and all future capital upgrade costs. And as well, with the part of the arrangement has been the inclusion of a parking lot and a parkade on York Boulevard for future development opportunities, as well as the affordable housing site on York Boulevard as well. And so for Hamilton, this is a momentous day indeed. Not only is it our 175th birthday anniversary of the incorporation of the city of Hamilton, but we have I think, a fantastic downtown precinct entertainment investment arrangement that will not only serve the taxpayers in terms of reduced costs over time, but also provide upgrades to these facilities that have been around a while and need upgrade that is going to be picked up by the development consortium going forward. So I want to thank Ryan McHugh and Ray Kessler on the call here today. They've done a terrific job of bringing this to conclusion, and of course we thank the Carmen's Group, Leuna, Fengate, Paletta Inc., and others that are part of the consortium that came together to put this proposal together. And I think we have a winning proposal for the city of Hamilton that not only speaks to renewing facilities, reducing operating costs for the city of Hamilton, but also future development opportunities that I think are going to hold the city in great stead going forward. So on that note, Michelle, I'm going to turn it back to you for specific questions or any briefing additions that Ryan or Ray would like to add or correct. If I got any of this wrong, I don't think I have. But certainly questions from media to explore further some of the details.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So we have 4 media partners with us this afternoon. We'll start with one question and one follow-up for each of you. First question will be to Tevye Morrow from the Hamilton Spectator. Tevye, please go ahead.
Sure. Thanks very much. I was hoping you could provide, Mr. Mayor and everyone else. We heard today, how this is such a great deal and a wonderful deal for taxpayers and for the facilities being regenerated and all that stuff. But I think it's important to be able to see the financial details, and I'm sure you can appreciate that. For example, we have 2 properties: the York Boulevard Parkade and the Vine Street surface parking lot, which, if I look at the language of the press release, transacting, which I assume is a land sale of some sort. That's one thing. But then we also have the overall lease agreement, which I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, I think is it 49 years and then 30 years, which is the operating cost and that sort of thing. I think that's how I understood it. So 3 points: clarification on the length of the lease agreement. Second point: what is the value of the sale? How much did we sell the parkade and the parking lot for? I understand that that's part of an overall financial agreement with the partners. Maybe it's a little more complex than that. And number 3, what is the Entertainment Precinct Group? I know that's not the name. What are they paying the city in for leasing these facilities? I think that kind of covers the financial questions I have.
Yeah, and I'm going to turn it right over to Ryan, who's probably most informed in terms of the details. But that was 3 questions. But Ryan, go
Yes,
ahead.
and I'll take the first one. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the term is 49 years for these operating leases. For the details around the value of the transaction, I'll let my colleague Ray Kessler, the head of real estate, take that question, please.
Yeah, and let me just preface that obviously everything that's done here is within the context of negotiated commercial agreements by their very nature. They are confidential. So we are providing you with the information that we can. I don't think it's as simple as, X dollars for this versus Y dollars for that. It is an overall deal. There are a number of different elements to it as outlined in the press release. Um, but for simplicity, in essence, there's an exchange here between three properties in exchange for a series of liabilities that, in essence, Hugh Peg will take on, which will be captured within those leases for those three facilities. And that's the economic exchange. They have an opportunity, obviously, and the city is looking forward to the level of detail development that they're going to provide on those properties. That's where they will get their return, of course, will be in the future development or redevelopment of the properties. The city in exchange gets properties that don't have any financial implications to the city for a series of, we're hoping 49 years at minimum. But as has been stated, 30 years guaranteed.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Ray. Tevye, if you have one follow-up, please go ahead.
Sure. I'll ask you about the system for grants. Could we ever be in a situation where grants that we give the the private partners, exceed the escalation of property values? Because maybe they invested X number of dollars in some sort of upgrade at the arena, and the grant they receive is commensurate. Is it commensurate to the upgrade, the money they put in, or is it always going to be commensurate to the escalation, if there is one, in property values? And will we ever be in a situation where the city loses because it has provided X number of dollars for grants, but not really seeing the value rise for property values?
So I can answer that, Ryan. The grants will be, and there will be a public meeting, I believe, in about a month related to this grant program in particular. So obviously, some more details will be coming out from that. The grants are tied directly to the value of the property, and obviously the value that is derived from the proposed development. So it's not tied to their investment; it's tied to their development.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ray. Our next question goes to Christine Rankin from CBC Hamilton. Christine, please go ahead.
Hi, thanks for the question. I was just hoping to clarify that 5% figure of affordable housing in one residential development that was in the release. And I'm wondering what context you can give to that 5% because it really can change, depending on the development that you're comparing it to.
Right, and I can grab this one. Thank you for the question. So as stated in the press release, so one of the residential developments will have 5% affordable units, and that is defined based on Hamilton's municipal housing facility bylaw. So the city has defined what is representative affordable housing, and Hugh Peg will be required to meet that definition.
Christine, if you have a follow-up, you can go ahead.
Sure, thanks. And I also want to clarify a difference of numbers from previous figures we've seen. There was initially more than, I think, 16 million to the concert hall and the art gallery, and now that's 12.5 in capital, and then 2 million contribution. And I'm wondering what changed here to make the numbers go down.
Ray, would you like to take that one, please?
Yeah, so as is fairly typical when you're going through a transaction of this nature where there are a number of different property interests and issues related to the land, Hugh Peg has undertaken due diligence on that property, and so there have been adjustments with regards to what we typically would consider in a real estate transaction consideration. And that was part of the negotiated process. They've certainly, identified issues with each of the properties, as they had undertaken their review and due diligence, and we negotiated what the outcome of those considerations would be.
Thank you, Ray. Our next question goes to Don Mitchell from 900 CHML. Don, please go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I wasn't ready for that. I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay, no problem, Don. Thank you. So the next question will then go to Lisa Hefner from CHCH News. Lisa, please go ahead.
Hi guys, thank you. I kind of want to go back to Tevia's first question about what taxpayers really, all of the details that they should know. So I don't know if you can give us any more detail about the value of those properties that the company is getting in exchange, or if there's any loss in revenue from those properties that the city would have otherwise gotten. Is there any considerations? I know everyone thinks it's a great deal, but what are the drawbacks that the taxpayers should know about?
Ryan or Ray?
Ray, you want to take the valuation question? And if you want, I can speak to the potential loss of revenues as an example.
Oh, so I was going to tackle that piece, but that's okay. We can't speak specific to the specific value on each. I can tell you that currently those properties only generate revenue for parking purposes, or at least 2 out of the 3 properties generate revenue for parking purposes. The third property is at a nominal value lease, and so it's a land lease. So, and on the parking side of it, it's really not. I can say this isn't, a huge revenue generator. Probably a good way to put it. It is part of our overall parking system. What we are getting, though, in exchange is the subsidies that the city currently is providing to the operation of the 3 downtown entertainment assets will be taken on by HUPEC. I hope that answers that question.
Lisa, do you have a follow-up?
I'm just wondering if you had any reaction from the Vrancor group about losing the bid, and whether you know what that company's plans are next.
So let me take that, because I do know, and I've spoken to the Vrancor group, and they were very supportive of UPEG's proposal and agreement with the City of Hamilton. Their vision was, and their view was, that they were equally interested in providing additional benefit and investments in the facilities. It was determined that the UPEG proposal was better overall for taxpayers and for the facility upgrades, and they're very comfortable with that, and they look forward to future developments as they're doing now in the City of Hamilton, in the downtown core precinct, as they were doing before. And and if as was indicated, if there is ever an additional partnership opportunity that worked for both organizations, they would be open to that discussion.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We do have a bit more time, so we'll go for one more round of questions. Tevye, if you have another question, please go ahead.
Can I
Yes.
cover off the
Sorry.
parkade issue? I mean, these are development sites, so parking, is not a massive revenue picture on a per site basis, and these become development sites that will generate additional tax dollars down the road. So, I think it's a net gain for the City of Hamilton overall in terms of that revenue picture. And I think, Ryan, maybe you can fill in the blanks a little bit more on that picture. Obviously, council supported this because it had a revenue positive scenario for the City of Hamilton, or at least avoided cost revenue positive scenario, as well as additional development opportunities that would generate more revenue into the future. Ryan?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. And when Ernst & Young did a study in 2019, they determined the cost of subsidy that the city provided the entertainment venues was over $150 million per year. And that was stated in the press release. Looking at the net income that the city generates from those existing properties, it's essentially net called even on an operating basis. And then there's ongoing capital repairs. As an example, the York Boulevard Parkade has a sizable backlog in capital needs. So by transacting that site, the city would actually be saving additional money on that front, just to supplement the mayor's point.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tevye, if you have a follow-up question, please go ahead now.
Thanks. Thanks very much. I want to ask about tax revenue scenarios. Had the private partners purchased the properties from the city, I realize that didn't happen. Sorry, the three main ones anyhow. Would the city have gained an advantage in tax revenue proceeds? And what are we potentially losing in tax revenue with the partners simply leasing the three facilities?
So Ray, I think that is a MCF type question, which I think
so there's currently, from a taxation perspective, those three facilities generate a degree of taxation. So MPAC assesses the properties and we tax accordingly. Portions of the activities that are currently carried out in those three facilities are tax exempt through a municipal capital facility exemption, and portions of them, such as the portions where they might say sell various, whether it's food and beverage or whatever the case may be, those types of operations are taxable and they currently pay tax. So where there's commercial activity, as it's deemed under the Assessment Act, they currently pay tax. Whether they are owners or whether they are tenants is immaterial. MPAC looks at the user. It doesn't necessarily look at the owner in this context. So it will not make a difference one way or the other. The tax implications will remain the same.
Okay, thank you for that. That helps a lot. Sorry, Michelle, do I have another question?
You can go ahead, Tevye.
Oh, okay, thanks. It is a general question, and anyone can chime in. I feel as though we've. I'm going to go back to the original question. We're told this is a really good deal, and no one's saying you're liars or anything like that. But you're kind of leading us down this path where we have to have this blind trust that it's a great deal. And I believe we were told that we would see this overall master agreement, that it was just a matter of time for it to be approved, and we would see the documentation so that, as a public, we could judge for ourselves and make our own analyses of whether this is a good deal or not. Why aren't we seeing the hard numbers? Why aren't we seeing the language? And when will we see the language?
Ray, do you want to speak to, just from a typical real estate perspective, what's typical with municipal transactions?
Yeah, and I'll go back to my original comments, right? So commercial contract, commercial confidentiality is pretty standard, whether you're in the public sector or the private sector. We are providing you with, I'll say, the framework of what the agreement provides and some high-level numbers as to what the pros and cons are, or at least where the different benefits flow to. And so in that context, I think we are providing you with a lot more detail than what was provided the last time around.
Great. Thank you, Ray. Christine, if you have another question, you can go ahead.
Sure. Thanks so much for the extra question. And I'm hoping just to talk on, I guess, construction concerns and the logistics about that, because if things do move forward with LRT in Hamilton, I believe these would overlap. And so I'm wondering what considerations there's going to be for perhaps surrounding businesses and whether or not it would compound any traffic concerns.
So first, in terms of timing, so currently HUPEG has estimated that construction would begin in the fall of 2022. They anticipate that construction at the arena would take place over 2 years, and they would work with the existing tenants to phase that construction to minimize any operational impact. In the event of LRT construction, I do want to say that HUPEG, all major members, are very supportive of that initiative. This deal is certainly not conditional on LRT, but working around the impacts of potential LRT construction. The HUPEG group, not to speak for them, but based on what's been communicated to city staff, they would welcome the short-term pain of that for the longer-term benefits of getting people in and out of the core to enjoy the great events at these venues.
And Christine, if you have one more, you can go ahead as well.
Sure. Thank you. I'm just gonna take a look here. I guess it would just be more of another question about the plan and whether there's been any specification about the high rises that were planned, because I think there was one, and I don't recall the intersection, but it was two and then a possible third. Has there been any movement on that?
So as a part of the agreement, so there's 3 properties that would transact to HUPEG. So one is the York Boulevard Parkade. The other is the surface parking lot on 14 Vine. And the third is 191 York Boulevard. So that would be just on the other side of York Boulevard from Sir John A. Macdonald School. So as part of this deal, those sites would be transacted, and HUPEG would have to go through the normal planning process to submit their design work, which would be approved through the normal course of the planning committee.
Thank you, Ryan. Lastly, we have Lisa Hefner. Lisa, if you have another question, please go ahead.
Sure, just to drag it out. I'm wondering if anyone has any sort of informed guesses about the outlook for entertainment and what we might see at these facilities given the pandemic.
Well, let me, short term, obviously, there's impact. There's no question about that. And there's already impact in these facilities that we've experienced over the last year and a half as we move closer and closer to some sense of normalcy. More people are getting vaccinated. Things are starting to open up. The Conference Board of Canada expects that Hamilton will have a 6% bump in terms of development going forward. So we're in a good space. We've had lots of development happening in the course of the pandemic, surprisingly so. Whether it's not only this arrangement, but the new businesses coming into Hamilton, L3 Harris up on the escarpment, the Amazon Fulfillment Center. I mean, the things have been moving along actually quite expeditiously in terms of development and growth. And so I see this as an indicator of confidence from the private sector on the future of Hamilton and the future of downtown Hamilton, and their anticipation and our, I think, collective anticipation is that the major events when we're past this pandemic are going to be back. We have the Rock playing now at First Ontario Centre. We have the Bulldogs functioning out of there, the Honey Badgers. So the volume of entertainment opportunities has certainly increased. The development opportunities downtown, many of them have already been realized. We see more cranes downtown right now than we've seen in decades, and anticipate more coming through this agreement. So I would say the private sector and certainly we here at the City of Hamilton public sector believe that once we're past the predominance of this pandemic, that people will be yearning for entertainment. People will be yearning for new housing opportunities. We know those are already issues that we're facing today. And so the confluence of the ability to put this deal together and what we see coming down the road, I think, is a great opportunity to help us bridge the economic recovery that we all anticipate will happen quite significantly once we're past the pandemic.
I think to echo the mayor's statements as well is this move also puts the assets into the hands of the private sector that will have considerable incentive to make these the best assets and the most attractive events to try and minimize their own risk. They're now taking on that risk from the city. And in that context, they're both positioned to take advantage of the opportunities that will avail themselves over the next coming years. But they'll also have a huge incentive to try and maximize the what I would call the pent up demand for events and those types of activities going forward post COVID. We're certainly seeing a lot of you look across Europe and other parts of the world where they're starting to open up, and you can really see the demand is quite substantial.
Great. Thank you, Ray. Lisa, if you do have one additional question, you can ask that now.
I'm good. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. So with that, that concludes today's media briefing. Thank you to Mayor Eisenberger, Ryan McHugh, and Ray Kessler, and to our media partners for joining us. I hope you all have a great afternoon.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.